Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Paul Thompson, a graduate of Newcastle Art Design College, has made a significant mark in photography from his base in London. Recognised with numerous awards including gold and silver from the Association of Photographers and a yellow pencil at D&AD, Paul's work has been showcased at the National Portrait Gallery, the Strand Art Gallery and internationally. His minimal abstract photos, often created on the coast late at night using a large format film camera, focus on stripping compositions down to their essentials. In 2019, he held his first solo exhibition in London, followed by a show in Arles, France. Thompson's work explores the intersection of art, environmental awareness and humanity's place in the world. Join him as we discuss his journey, the creative process, the impact of AI on photography, and the balance between artistry and marketing. I hope you enjoyed the show. G'day, Paul. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Yeah, not bad at all. Not bad at all. How are you?
Yeah, wonderfully well. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. You've been on my list for a little while, and we were just talking before. I can't remember exactly who it was that suggested.
Yeah.
I might take a look through and see if I can find what's going on there. Anyway, let's talk about you and what photography means to you and why it's such a big part of your life.
Right. For me, basically, where I started into landscape photography again is I picked up a camera probably when I was younger, probably when I was 13, 14, something like that. And I knew I'd seen what I wanted to create, but I couldn't do it. And being a kid back then,
Yep.
Your interest is really short and you expect it to happen immediately. And when it doesn't, on to the next thing. So that's what happened with photography when I was younger. I picked it up, saw what I wanted, but I couldn't create it. I drifted away from it, did all sorts of other things. I trained as basically in wildlife management and habitat management and all of that sort of outdoor kind of thing. So I was always into the outdoors. I always into nature and that sort of thing. So that was always going on in the back of my mind, really.
Yeah.
When I'd finished college and everything to do with that subject, it was a case of I couldn't get any work. So it was a case of find a job, and the job was nothing to do with that. At the beginning, it was all in like plant and machinery. It was about as far away as you could possibly get from what I'd trained for. And I had various different jobs until I started drifting back into creative stuff because I'm a drummer, I'm a musician. So that was always going on in the background. And I started my own music shop selling musical instruments.
Okay. Wow.
And 2008, when the financial crash hit, polished it off. It just finished the business off because obviously one of the first things to go is luxury items. So that kind of finished that off. So I had to find a job really quick at that point. And that ended up delivering secure mail and passports.
Right.
So that was going to tie me over for a year until I got back on my feet and found something else after the business. Yeah, 10 years later, I was still doing it.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was really affecting my mental health because it's one of those jobs where it doesn't seem like it from the outside looking in, but it's a highly pressured job. Everything's on time scales, everything has to be, and it's quite a dangerous job. You're flat out all day, foot to the boards, trying to make all these time slots. I got to the point mentally where I really couldn't take any more. In between all of this happening, I'd had photography, I'd picked it back up again as a release, to get out and get back out into nature again. So I'd been doing that for probably 8 of the 10 years that I'd been doing the driving, just as a break away from it all to try and decompress almost. So that had been going on. And I got to the end of this 10 years and I thought, I really can't do this job anymore. What am I going to do? So I thought photography's been there and I've been really into it. It's one of those things that I was really enjoying doing outside of work. So I thought maybe now was the time to try and make something of that. And because I found the difference between being so much more relaxed doing the photography and not as stressed anymore, that's the thing to try. So I just bit the bullet. I chucked the towel in with the driving. I thought I'll just go all in and try the photography.
How long ago was that?
So that now will be, since full time, this will be my 3rd year, I think.
Okay.
Third year full time. So that's where I'm at now.
And I want to talk a little bit later about some of the business aspects, but how's it going? I know what it's like myself, and
Yeah,
how long it's taken me to get
yeah, it's not
somewhere,
easy.
and it's still not as far as I'd like to be.
No, it's nowhere near, to be honest. It's nowhere near, but I can see progression every year.
Yeah,
If it wasn't, I had a real point this year where I was really worried because it had taken a real slump.
yeah,
People weren't booking workshops. It was just and I think it was across the board.
mm,
Speaking to other people in even like the wedding industry for photography and stuff like that, they'd all experienced this sort of
yeah,
ditch. So it's starting to climb back out of it now. But there was a real period where I'm thinking really quiet. It's quite scary, but I think you're always going to get those peaks and troughs, and it's
yeah,
just a
definitely.
case of working through it, really.
So I want to talk a bit more about what motivates you and what it is that gets your creative juices flowing. What exactly do you think about when you say, okay, I want to go and make an image? What does that process look like?
You'll probably notice that a lot of my images have certain themes about them.
Mhm.
A lot of my images have water in them. I've got a real sort of thing going on with water. I love everything to do with the water, and it would be it long exposures. I love the fluid motion of water that it's ever changing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's why when you take an image, you can take 300 images of the same scene, but it'll never look the same.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly. And that's what I love about having water in the scene,
yeah,
is that
right.
you're always going to have something different in each frame, really. And it gives you so much to work with. It's almost like a palette to work with. You've got so many different textures to work with water in the frame. So
Sure.
that's one of the things that really piques my interest. The other one is wilderness. So I've got this real thing with wilderness. I've got obviously where I live, I've got the Lake District on my doorstep, the
Yeah,
Arles
right.
Lake. And people say, why don't you shoot in the Lake District more? It doesn't really do a lot for me.
Okay,
And it's
wow.
and it sounds ridiculous. I'll go and photograph there, don't get me wrong, and there is beautiful scenes there.
Yeah,
But personally, I find it a bit too manicured
okay.
because the Lake District has been shaped. The way it looks today is basically because of farming, agriculture,
Yeah,
and
right,
man, but
right.
it looks quite a lot. Yeah, manicured is the only way I can come up with it. Whereas
Yeah, okay.
I tend to, if I'm going to shoot, I tend to want to go to wilder places. So I'll head up into Scotland, places like that.
Yep.
It's got a lot more rugged and a lot more, I don't know, wild energy about it for me, really.
Yeah.
As much as I like to sometimes include man-made elements in shots,
Mm,
wilderness is what really does it for me. And I think that stems back to what I actually train for, which is all the habitat management and
sure.
stuff like that.
I was going to ask how much of that training has been part of, or that you've used in your photography. Have you been able to leverage some of that learning that you did way back?
Yeah, I think a lot of it does because you have a bit more insight as to what's what, basically, meaning you know what's around you a lot more. So I
Yeah,
can
right.
tell what plants are around me or what sort of landscape, what sort of habitats I'm working in. So it does help. It really helps, especially focusing my mind as to what I want to shoot.
Sure.
So if I want to include, I don't know, a fern there or whatever it might be, I know what I'm looking at to be able to put everything into a frame.
Mm,
So
mm,
it does help that way. And it also helps in the fact that I guess I'm more clued up as to not leave any trace and not make an impact on where I'm
sure.
photographing.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm aware of what I'm looking at and how that's going to affect how me being there is going to affect the habitat. So I'm very much aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has helped in that way.
Yeah. Fair enough. And do you set goals for yourself, or are you more free flowing and just take it as it comes?
I'm not a very good planner
Okay.
at all. And I'm good at planning out things that need to be planned, like workshops, things like that.
Sure. Sure.
But where it comes, especially like YouTube, for example, people say, do you not storyboard all your YouTube? No, I don't. I like to go out almost with the blank canvas again and see what I'm going to shoot. I don't even know what the video is going to be about half the time. And that's probably why my YouTube channel doesn't grow as well as it could, is because I don't really plan it.
Right.
I go out and whatever I'm going to, I don't even plan what I'm going to shoot. I plan a
Right.
location that I want to go to
Yeah.
and a vague idea of what I want to photograph. But I don't think to myself, I'm going overseas today, so I'm going to do something about shutter speeds or if I filter. I don't think like that. I just go and whatever happens because I feel I like that sort of free flowing
Yeah, right.
way of working, really. I like to see what's going to work for me at the time, really. I don't want to put pressure on myself because I find that anything to do with creativity, if you're putting that pressure on yourself to make it work or make something happen, that's the very point where it's not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So as free flowing as I can get it is how I like to work because I think that's best for creativity.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about YouTube and how you got into that. What made you start vlogging what you were doing with your photography?
Yeah, because it's one of
Because it
those
kind of
double-edged
doubles or
swords.
triples or quadruples your work, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does very much. And it does stack the pressure on as well.
Yeah,
And I wanted something to force me out. As much as I like that free flowing way of working,
yep,
sometimes we all need to kick up the backside to go and get out and do it.
yeah, yeah,
So for me, YouTube number one was to get me out more, to get me out photographing more, and to make sure that I was gonna, because I was relying on myself to do it, force myself into this routine of getting out.
right.
Which is funny because this last month I haven't done a single YouTube video.
Okay,
And the reason for it is because there's been lots of stuff going on. Like my eldest boy had his last 2 weeks at primary school, so I
yeah,
wanted to be present for that.
yep,
I didn't want to miss it just because I was working, because
yeah.
you're never going to have those moments again.
No, that's it. They're once in a lifetime events, aren't
Yeah. And it goes into secondary school and then you start to gradually lose them from that
they?
point
Yeah,
on. So I thought, I'm going to take the time now. So that was one of the reasons. And the other reason was I was thinking, I didn't want to put pressure on myself. I was getting to the point where I was forcing myself to go out and create a video. And I felt as though if I continue on that path, I'm going to start just putting any old content out just to get a weekly video out.
yeah, right, right.
So I thought, because this is happening with my son and because this is the way I'm feeling at the minute, I'm just going to take a month off. And it's a really hard thing mentally to do
Yep,
because YouTube has this way of playing on your mind in the background, thinking, well, if you don't put content out, nobody's going to remember who you are. And if you don't put content out, they're going to start throttling your reach because
yeah,
you haven't put a video out. And you start having all this going on in your head. And I think I just have to switch off to it and just
yeah.
think everybody needs a break sometime.
That's it. I
So
mean, if you were working full time in a paid job
yeah,
for some company or something, you're
mhm,
going to get time off. You're going to get a month off of a year or so.
yeah. And
And a
and
week.
but other people in the YouTube space have the foresight to get videos stacked up so that
Yeah,
when they have a break, yeah, you say I don't work like that either.
yeah.
I
Well,
can't.
that's how I operate with the podcast. When I want to go and take a break, I take a break, but everything's scheduled and it just rolls out. And other
Yeah,
than
yeah,
doing a few social media posts each week, that's all I do.
yeah. And the problem is for me is that I don't like to be putting content out that's old, if
Yeah,
that
I get
makes
it. Yeah.
sense. I like
And
to be
with YouTube,
fresh.
it being seasonal and being in the moment
Yeah,
does make a difference to what people watch.
yeah, exactly. So I like to be fresh. So I like to think I've put out this week's video. Now I need to go and film something for next week so that it's constantly almost up to date. And I'm not putting
So,
something out that I recorded 8 weeks ago or whatever. It's all up to date because you're putting a video out and it's snowing and everybody's sitting in sun and it feels a bit weird to me.
yeah.
So that's the way I
I'm
work. And
used to it
because
though. Down here, if you guys are in the middle of winter. You're in the middle of summer now. I'm in the middle of winter, and not exactly freezing my butt off, but
yeah, what you say we're in the middle of summer. We're not really. It's
well,
never actually
I was
happened.
over there. When was it? In July, and it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
the most autumnal summer I've ever experienced.
It's just been the most horrific summer this year. Awful. It's just not happening. It's not happening. So yeah, that's for me is the reason why I work that way, is that I just like to be up to date. So that
Yeah,
as a consequence, when I decide I'm going to take some time off, it means that everything just stops. And it's probably not the best way of working, but it's just the way my mind works. It's the
yeah,
way I like to. So it's just almost like I get to a point and it's right. I haven't even picked the camera up for 4 weeks either. I haven't done YouTube, haven't picked the
yeah. Wow.
camera up. I just switched off to everything. I thought I've got jobs around that need doing around the house.
Yep.
I'll do all of that sort of thing. I'll just switch off entirely to it and just give myself a bit of breathing space, really.
Mm.
So I can come back fresh, really. That's the idea.
In terms of your personal expression and your style, how would you describe it to somebody that hasn't seen any of your work?
I try to be It's funny because I've got two things going on. I try to be as natural as possible
Yep.
as far as my work goes. I'm not a real fan of adding things or anything
Sure.
like that. I've got no problem with taking things out of a frame if they're bothering me, but adding them back in, I'm not into all of that. But I also like this sort of fantasy feel as well. This sort of, I don't know, this Lord of the Ringsy sort of
Yeah,
fantasy
yeah.
feel, all of that sort of Middle Earthy type imagery I have
Yep.
playing in my mind quite often. So if I see something that captures that interest, that
Uh-huh.
sort of piques that interest in a scene, then I'm really drawn to that. I'm really
Mm.
drawn to it. But I want it to be, I don't want to create it. You know
Right.
what I mean? Something will remind me of something like that, wherever
Yep.
it might be. And then that really makes me want to make an image of it because it's almost happening in front of you. But I don't want to actually manipulate that to happen. I want it to be like that in front of.
Mm. Mm.
But that sort of fantasy feel to an image really appeals.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, and I don't know whether that comes across in my imagery or whether the
Certainly on some of it.
yeah, and the natural look. I think a lot of my images, they're not over the top. They're not over the top processed. I don't like huge amounts of saturated images.
Yeah, yeah.
Try and keep it as natural as possible. It's probably one of the reasons why I drifted towards picking up the GFX,
Yeah, right.
because straight out of camera, the images look so lovely. I don't need to work on them.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what drew me to that. And I've found since using that camera now, I've found more of my style
Hmm.
just in using that camera because I don't have to edit as much.
Yeah. Okay. Communication's a big thing with photography, and it's obviously what YouTube's all about. Do
Yeah,
you find that the work that you've done through YouTube has influenced your photography much, or is it the other way around? The photography influences what you're doing with YouTube?
I really want to. I'm very conscious of the fact I don't want to be a YouTuber with a camera.
Yeah,
I
right.
want to be a photographer with a YouTube channel.
Sure.
So I really focus. I try and focus. I don't just want to throw out any old image just to put a video out. So I'm really conscious of the fact that when I go out photographing and I go out for a video, I want to get decent images for that video, not the other
Yeah,
way
right.
around. I want to think I've got this video now, so now I have to cobble something together to throw into it. I want to have it. I don't know. It plays in the back of your mind that you want to have that almost integrity. So you cling to the fact that you want to be a photographer first.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think as far as that goes, it influences the way I work because I want to have a decent images to go with a video and not the other way around.
yeah. How much of
Personally,
you, sorry, go on.
no, that's it. Carry on.
I was going to say, how much of your success would you attribute to your ability to communicate?
It's funny because photography, you think your imagery would do all the talking for you
Hmm.
with as far as communication, but social media doesn't work that way.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
You know what it's like nowadays with social media, and you just basically swipe.
Yeah, yeah,
So you either have to come up with images that really stand out just to capture attention,
yeah,
and that goes, I suppose that works into who you're trying to capture the attention of. And usually for us, especially with YouTube and things like that, you're playing to other photographers, which is a weird market.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's
Because
not just
they're highly unlikely to buy prints off you, but join a workshop.
exactly. So that's where my focus goes towards, really,
Yeah,
as far as YouTube. I use YouTube, number one, as a means to get out and force myself out into working and getting stuff done, but also it's marketing, right? Really, it's
yeah,
putting
yeah.
yourself out there in front of people, and that part of the communication is really important
Mm,
because it's one of the biggest ways we as photographers can put ourselves in front of the right audience,
yeah,
because social media is so fickle, really. Because as I say, you're capturing seconds of attention,
yeah. If that, if you're
whereas
lucky.
yeah, if you're lucky, yeah. Whereas YouTube, you've got that audience in front of you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's the way I work with that, and communication is really important as far as that's concerned with YouTube. Is getting your message out there as to what you're doing, what workshops you have, what your plans are. All of it is put out through YouTube.
Mm. One of the things I hear quite regularly, mostly from YouTube photographers,
Yeah.
is that you should have a YouTube channel if you're a photographer in 2022, 2023, 2024, because I've heard it for several years now. What's
Yeah.
your take on that?
If you're a professional photographer and that's what you do for a living, I think it's almost 100% necessary to have a YouTube channel
Yeah, okay.
just to push you, to increase your audience.
Yeah,
And I think that's the biggest thing that we all try and do as photographers. The bigger your audience, the more people that you've got in your circle are more likely to interact with you, come on
yeah.
workshops with you, or seek advice from you, whatever it might be. It's all about increasing that audience to get your name out there.
Mm.
And again, that stems back to this month off. This is the panic. You don't do anything for a month, and you think, oh no, nobody,
Nobody's going to see me. Nobody's going to know who
no.
I am.
So at the very least, I'm still putting images out. So even though I've been off, I'm still been working on the odd image and popping them out on social media just to keep it ticking over.
Yeah,
But I think it is 100% necessary to have a YouTube channel because not only does it increase your engagement and it increases the amount of people who see your work, it also lets them get to know you. Especially if you're a type of YouTuber who basically wears the heart on a sleeve and doesn't put anything on. You are who you are, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's the way I try to be with my video. Try and be anybody else. I am what I am, and that's it. And hopefully people either like that or they don't like it. You know? But I think that's the really important thing about YouTube is if you are yourself and you're putting yourself out there, people get to see that and they get to follow along with the same journey. So I think it really helps that way.
Yeah, yeah. Have you found a difference in terms of response to some of your videos between, say, one that's focused a bit on gear or the technical aspects versus one that's more about your own photography experience?
Yeah. And it's a funny thing because people say, I hate gear videos. I hate
Yeah,
gear
but
videos. I
they
don't know
tend
why
to watch them.
yeah, they get more views than anything else.
Yeah.
So they can't hate them that much. I think the problem is that we're at a point now, especially with YouTube, where you have to, there's very much an emphasis on people putting clickbait titles on to get views.
Yeah, yeah.
And unfortunately, as sad as it is, we're forced into that. If you don't do it, you're not going to get the views. And
Exactly.
it's sad. No matter what it is, whether it's a vlog related video, whether it's a gear related video, unless you title it and thumbnail it in a way that people are going to click on it, you're not going to get the interaction, you're not going to get the engagement or the views. So we're almost forced into that. And it's a sad way to be, really. It's sad to have to spend more time thinking about how am I going to get people to click on this instead of the actual content. You can spend more time thinking about that than producing the actual content.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's also pointless as far as we're concerned to put all that effort into making these videos and then nobody sees them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very much a double-edged sword. None of us really want to have to do that, but if that's what we have to do to get the views, then that's what we'll have to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's I think the whole experience with YouTube and the way that the algorithm works and the way that people get stuff suggested to them really does depend a lot on whether or not the person behind it has actually put the time in to do the work to do exactly what you were saying. Put that clickbait title on and the funny looking thumbnail that makes you go, oh, I got to click on that to see what that's.
Yeah, exactly. I quit. Yeah. Really? But it's just the funniest thing, and it's the funniest thing to be in the middle of is to try and you're competing against everybody else for clicks.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what it comes down to: a simple thumbnail or a title, and it's such a shame because the content is worth way much more than that is. But
yeah, going back a little bit to where we started this part of the conversation, the way I watch, I tend to look for certain people. So there's a bunch of guys that I go to for their gear videos because I know they know their stuff, and I know it's not their part-time gig. That's what they do. And the same if I'm looking at yourself or a Thomas Heaton or a Nigel Danson or whatever, I'm looking for that experiential thing about, okay, take me on a journey. I'm interested in where you're going and what you're shooting. And I guess I'd be less inclined, and I'm not knocking any gear related videos that you've done. I'll
Yeah.
be less inclined to be clicking on them and absorbing them as much because to me, I think gear is one of the most boring topics on earth,
Oh, it
which is
is.
why I
That's
don't
for
talk a
sure.
lot about it on the podcast.
It is very much.
But yeah, I do like to nerd out occasionally and go, okay, so what's the latest offering from Sony, Nikon, Canon, et cetera, and just see.
Yeah.
And it's more about, okay, there's a new launch, there's something new out in the market. Is it worth, spending some shekels on or not?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And sometimes it's just people justifying the purchases.
That's it. Yeah.
I bought this, and then now I want to watch 5 videos to make sure I've just bought the right thing.
That's right. Yeah. I do it. If I'm going to buy something new, I do tend to try and find a bit of research on it if I can.
Yeah.
But even that is fraught because you find all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff out there saying this is fantastic. I wouldn't buy it if I was paid to, and
Yeah.
everything in between.
Yeah, this is the thing. This is the thing. It's like this camera that I'm using now, this Osmo Pocket 3. I
Yeah, yeah.
just literally bought it, and I must have watched about 20 videos to make sure it would do everything I wanted it to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that I got this to do to update my YouTube videos and make them better looking quality. I've never been out since I got it.
Yeah.
Had that month off. Yeah, it's still to get its out in yet, but works well for this.
I want to move on to back to the photography side of things. And
Yep.
you mentioned your respect for the environment and so forth. That's very obvious in your work and in your videos. Do you think landscape photography in and of itself can be a tool for environmental education and advocacy?
Yeah, I think so, because especially when we're photographing wild areas, wild places,
Yeah.
things like that, I guess we're documenting a lot of the case. Unless you're a photographer that likes to, like we were discussing before, likes to manipulate a scene or anything like that. But
Okay.
if you're keeping a scene more natural, I think we're documenting what's there.
Yeah.
And especially so, I know I work quite a lot with Adam Gibbs.
Yep.
He's very much into the old growth forests, and that's basically what he's doing with a lot of his photography is documenting those old growth forests.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole load of these things in the UK, really. We have ancient woodlands,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is in a slightly different vein, but in the same, it's a slightly different vein, but at the same time, we're still documenting what's there.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
think it's really important for us as landscape photographers to do that because things change so fast. And funnily enough, quite a while back there, just a kind of a simple thing like you go to a scene one day, you photograph it, and then a few weeks later, you go back to see what's changed, and it could have completely changed. I shot a tree locally in this woodland, and it was a beautiful scene. And I went back the next year, and half of it was missing.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
things can change so fast.
Yeah. It only
In
takes a
nature.
windstorm or
Yeah,
a,
yeah.
a good solid rain and the whole tree can fall over.
And that's basically just caused by environmental conditions. Now, things that are caused by us as humans, then that changes so much faster, especially when it comes to areas of countryside that 1 minute are there, the next minute they're built on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it is really important to document what's there and what was there because things change so quick.
Yeah. I think you touch on something there that it's always been a bit of a passion of mine is that documentary side of photography. Yes, you can make a very artistic piece of work, but it can also still be quite documentary because in an urban environment, it might show the progress from when you took the shot to today, or as you say, the changes that happen in a forest or a wilderness area. And
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think it's vital that photography is used in that way as well. One of the things that really fascinates me is looking back at stuff from the early to mid 20th century
Yeah.
and looking at places like Sydney and London and whatever and seeing what things were like then and what they're like now and just seeing the changes that go on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think it works really well. There's I quite like the work of Peter
Yep,
Dombrowski, obviously Tasmanian photographer. What
yep,
was, and that's basically his style of photography was more documentary, and he was very much an environmental photographer, what I would consider an environmental photographer, because his passion was looking after this area of wilderness,
yeah, yeah,
and that's very much to me not what landscape photography should be about, but it resonates with me because that's what I trained in. I trained in that sort
Yeah.
of looking after these sort of places. So to be able to do what he did and document those areas, because as we discussed before, things change so quickly. So it's
Yeah.
so, and getting it out into the general public, because the general public don't see these places a lot of the and the
No.
only way they actually see these places is if we go there and photograph it. And it's a double-edged sword because obviously the more we go to these locations, the more that other people want to go to them. And then that's when you can run into problems with damage and everything like that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very much what do you do? Sometimes you have to go to these places to document, but then
Yeah.
unfortunately, people want to
Someone's
follow in
going
your
to follow
footsteps
along.
and go. And it's usually photographers, to be fair.
Yeah. True.
That's the
True.
thing. And not
I,
all of us in the landscape photography field are as passionate about where we're going to photograph or as considered about what we're photographing.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a hard thing to wrestle with.
Yeah, I think some of those ethical considerations, though, are really important to talk about because, as you said, there's places which have been trashed because of the traffic.
Yeah.
I like to think better of most of the landscape photography community, the actual guys that do
Yeah.
that for a living or
Definitely.
passionate amateurs. It
Yeah.
tends to be, I think, more people that want to get the shot for the gram, that sort of photographer.
Yeah. The the yellow bobble hat wearing Instagram.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or the orange jacket or the yellow jacket or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah. And places like that everywhere you look. You just need to go to Scotland, for example,
absolutely.
and you go to Glencoe and the waterfall shot that everybody gets in front of the buckle. It's trashed. It's like the Somme out at the front of
Yeah,
that place. It's basically sitting on a peat bog, and that peat bog is basically like a marsh in front of it now. It's just
yeah,
completely trashed, and it's just
been trodden
I
into.
mean, and the problem is, it's one of those really difficult things because I'll run workshops in Glencoe, and people want to go and get that shot. So it's a really hard position to be in because you're adding to that traffic by taking people there.
Yeah.
And it's how do you manage that?
How do you do that
And
ethically and in a
yeah,
way that you're not actually going to cause damage?
yeah, exactly. It's a really difficult position to be in because on one hand you've got the business side of it where you need to make money, you need to take people on a workshop. On
Mm,
the other hand of it, you think I'm not doing the best for this place here, and it shouldn't always be about the financial gain.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so and they wanted to put a boardwalk there, and that was people don't want it. So it's a difficult thing to wrestle with because it's not only just as we discuss landscape photographers, it's Instagrammers, it's people, tourists want to get that shot and they'll turn up, they'll grab the shot with the phone and off again. But the
Yeah.
amount of people doing that over a day is what obviously leads to that damage.
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
only way and the only way to actually deal with that is to put infrastructure in to protect it. And then when you
Yeah.
do that, you're changing the environment. So
See
it's
that
a
in Tasmania with the overland track, for example. The
yeah,
people that use that, and it had to be boardwalked because otherwise it was just going to trash the entire. You'd basically have this trench going from end to end, and
yeah.
it just wasn't viable to do it any other way.
And it's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. And as much as, and you'll get people saying, you're one of the causes of it. You're a landscape photographer and you're drawing attention to these places. And yeah, we are. But at the same time, I don't think you can't just stop. You can't just stop documenting places
No,
or
no,
because it's important to see that. And I think it's just working out the best way of managing the situation rather than just letting the places get trashed. Is you have to have somebody step in and say, "We need to do something here because we're going to lose it altogether otherwise."
yeah, exactly,
So
exactly.
it's just a balancing act, I think.
Yeah. What does success look like for you in your photography?
No, that's a good question.
I know, that's why I ask it.
Yeah, I know. You're good at that. For me, it's being able to enjoy the outdoors and be able to support myself financially at the same time.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a balancing act for me because I've never been a person drawn to financial gain. I'm not
Yeah,
interested in being rich. I'm not interested in any of that. I just want to be comfortable.
yeah,
That's all I
yeah.
want. I'd rather be mentally stable with what I'm doing and enjoy what I'm doing
Yep.
than be rich or any of that. I
Yeah.
just want to be comfortable. That's all I'm interested in as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. And getting back to what we were talking about before, I'd rather be known for my photography than the YouTube videos.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So I'd rather have more impact with my images than the videos,
Yeah.
if at all possible.
Mm.
Yeah, that's it for me because I've often been an advocate of, and I've spoken about it many times on my YouTube videos about that I've struggled with mental health.
Yep.
And a lot of landscape photographers do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to me to have that release and to be able to switch off to everything else. And landscape photography does that for me. So to be able to continue with the landscape photography means that I'm healthier as a person.
Yeah.
So that's what success looks like to me.
Fantastic. What have you learned from running your business?
Now, as far as photography is concerned, it's very little to do with photography.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned. It's if somebody says, "Oh, you're a landscape photographer," that's amazing. It must be an amazing job. You get to go out photographing every day. Not really. I get to stare at a screen most of it. Because if I think about how my business works, so two days of it is producing videos.
Yep.
So I'll go out, I'll shoot a YouTube video one day, the next day I'll edit it. So that's 2 days of my working week gone straight away.
Yeah, wow.
And then that leaves, if I'm just going to work a 5-day a week, that leaves me 3 days to do other things. And those other things tend to be anything and everything.
Yeah,
It's
right.
not just producing photographs, because the photographs actually don't make me any money. I don't sell a ton of prints.
Mm-hmm.
Sell a print every now and then. It couldn't sustain me, for sure.
Yep.
So most of the way my photography business works is through education. I make videos and content for Outdoor Photography Guide. It's like an online magazine in the States.
Yep.
So I have that going on. I've got the workshops going on, which I have to keep increasing the amount of to make ends meet. It might be people get you in to do a commission for them. You've got to spread yourself everywhere and over everything, basically. You can't just say, and I'm going to do prints and that's how I'm going to make money. You have to have all these different...
Diversification, the answer.
Yeah, it's the only way you can really do it.
Yeah.
Is look for different income streams. And you have to have all of this going on at the same time, because if one drop, then what?
That's it. Yeah.
So you need to be able to put yourself in a lot of different places. And it's a constant challenge, really, is coming up with new ideas of diversify your business.
Yep.
But certainly for me, and I know some people in the States and what have you can make a living solely from print.
Yeah.
For me, it doesn't work here for me.
I'm the same. I struggle to sell a lot. There's the odd one come through now and then, but it's one of the reasons why I started doing calendars, is because, and by the way, they're on sale right now. So.
I see what you did there.
But yeah, doing calendars it's just another string to the bow and another potential income stream. If you can find yourself a good place that does them cheaply and that will work with you to get the result that you want. And it's really important, I think, as you said, to have multiple income streams, because otherwise you're never going to make very much money out of it.
No, not at all. Not at all. And unfortunately, I think probably looking at my business, workshop seems to be the main place where I make income. And I tend not to do... I do day workshops as well, but to be honest, it's the residential workshops that seems to be the best ones.
Yeah.
But they also take the most work.
Yes, exactly.
Most planning and all the rest of it. So it's you, and then people. I don't know whether you get it, whether you do any workshops, like long form workshops, but people say you've got an amazing life. You go all over the world, and you I said, you do know that I'm like a glorified tour operator, don't you?
Yeah, that's it. Tour operator with a camera in the hand.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's basically what you're doing.
Yeah,
because
I know.
You've got to be there 100% for everyone all the time when you're away.
And it means if someone wants to get up at 4 a.m. to go and shoot astro or whatever, you got to be there with them.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, you got amazing life, you. I'll have a
long days.
Yeah, but I
lots
don't.
of prep and planning. And, all the stress of making sure that everyone's happy.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same token, you take a step back and you think, I wouldn't change it for the world, because it is an amazing, whichever way you look at it, it's an amazing way to get out and to make a living, to stand there and be able
to meet people too. I think it's that's one of the nicest parts about it,
because it's a very getting back to the mental health aspect. It's a very lonely business.
Yeah.
landscape photography, or it can be. Some people have this notion where I do landscape photography to get away from people, and that's fine to a certain degree. But when you work from home and you're self-employed photographer and you're basically sitting behind these monitors all day and you don't leave home and that's all you do, it can become very solitary. So it's, for me, when I go out to do these workshops, it's like a complete breath of fresh air, and it's a release to be able to interact with people again, humans.
What's the most important thing to remember about marketing your personal brand?
Everybody sees everything
that
you do. And hears everything that you say. So as far as marketing goes, I think you have to be really careful that you're 100% authentic. Because people have really good memories when it...
Totally.
And marketing, if you put yourself across as 100% you, like I do with my videos, then there's nothing can go wrong then, because you're selling what you are, not something you're not. So I think as far as marketing is concerned, I think that's really important, to put yourself out there 100% as you are, because then people know you already. Before they come on a workshop, before they buy a print off you, anything like that, they already know who you are. And it's funny, that's what you get from the YouTube videos, that people come up to you and talk to you like they know you. And some people say, that's weird, that is. It is weird, but it's also a nice thing as well.
Absolutely.
Because you're already on the same page with that person when you don't have to go through all that awkward getting to know you phase. They already do.
They've seen your face. They know your style, and they're basically going on your workshops because they've seen that and they know what to expect.
And that comes back to that what we were saying before, what YouTube does for you, and that's basically what it does for you. It gives you that sort of authentic marketing straight away, because they already know what they're getting. I think that's really important.
With your workshops, we talked a little bit about how you operate, but what could somebody expect if they were going to attend a Paul Thompson workshop?
So the ones that I do one-to-ones, obviously you get undivided attention, but I'm quite a relaxed educator. I don't ram things down people's throats. I really like people to get into their own zone and then ask the questions as it happens. I don't like to force what I think they need to learn on them. I want people to be able to approach me as to what they need to learn. And then I'll spend all the time they want on. But the workshops I do, when I do a lot of them abroad, is I work with partners quite a lot of the time. So I partner up with Adam Gibbs quite a lot, Matt Bishop. I partner up with him in Italy. So there's always two of us, and I think that's important. And the reason I do that is because we have two different styles of teaching people. And that gives people on a workshop who maybe don't want to learn the way I teach, they've got another person. And it gives them, I think it gives them more value in educational terms, because they're seeing two different perspectives, they're seeing different ways of working, and you get to mix it up. Whereas I think sometimes you go on a workshop, you're very limited because you're stuck with that one way of working or that one point of view. So I think it works really well if there's more than one tutor. It gives it a different dimension, a different energy to the way that people learn. But for me, I'm very relaxed. I like to put that way across. Whereas when I'm across, say, for example, in Italy with Matt Bishop, he's very much more in your face, and this is the way I work, and that's not the way I teach. But I think it's important to have those opposing forces almost to give people a different way to work. But 100% undivided attention and just a relaxed way of working that's the way I like to do my workshops.
You do a fair amount of travel with those workshops. What's the furthest you've traveled to get a shot?
It's Vancouver. Vancouver Island, that's the furthest I've traveled, which has been, so when we go to do those workshops, it's a 12-hour flight, and then it's a couple hours on a ferry, and then it's another hour and a half drive at the other ends. It's 14, 15 hours, but it's not like going from the UK to Australia or 24 hours or whatever. But that's probably the furthest I've gone so far is Vancouver.
And have you got a favourite place in the world that you like to shoot?
I have a few for different reasons. Scotland's really close to my heart for sure, because it's literally on my doorstep. Where I am, I'm basically at a cross point in the UK. So I've got 10 miles north, I've got the Scottish border.
Yep.
And then if I drive across towards the northeast, that's Northumberland. We have all the castles and everything over that way. Then I have the Lake District on my doorstep. So I'm in quite a fortunate area in the UK for photography.
Yeah, yeah.
But for forest photography and a more wilderness feel, I love Canada. Really
Yeah.
love. And then last year we went to the Redwoods in California as well, and that was an
Fantastic. Yeah.
amazing experience. All of these old growth wildernessy areas is what really appeals to me. It doesn't matter where it is, could be any. And unfortunately, America and Canada have just amazing areas everywhere
Yeah.
for wilderness.
Yeah.
Really, it's just a fantastic place. But there's also places on my list that I'd love to go to Greenland and places like that have vast areas of wilderness that
Yeah.
that don't get photographed actually that much, really.
Yeah. A lot of Greenland's fairly inaccessible except by air.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I,
And that's what
I
appeals, I
flew
guess.
over Greenland for the first time actually on was it last year on a trip to the UK, and
Right.
went up via Tokyo and then up through the Bering Strait and over the North Pole and Greenland. Yeah. And it's just unbelievable to look at from above, and
Yeah.
somewhere I'd really love to explore.
So what it's like when you're actually on the ground, it must be just amazing. Looks awesome. And we were in the process of actually looking at doing workshops there. I had a road in to do workshops, but it's not the easiest place to sort out for a workshop tour.
Yeah, it's hard to get people and gear in and out of there too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main issue is that you can't fly direct.
No.
So you have to fly to Iceland, and then you get to Iceland, and then they just double the price on everything.
Yep.
So it's actually more expensive to fly from Iceland to Greenland than it is to fly from the UK to Iceland. It's ridiculous. And yet so much closer. So that also increases the costs. But I think it's definitely somewhere that I'd really like to push for and try for workshops, because as I said, there's not many people doing it.
No, definitely not. What's your most memorable photography experience?
One of them is probably the Redwoods.
Yeah, right.
And I think it was solely because of the conditions we got. The conditions were just absolutely amazing at the time we went. We got amazing conditions for 3 days where there was just sea fog coming through the trees.
Fantastic.
And it was just, there was nobody there. There was literally just myself and Adam in this whole area of woodland. And we had this amazing fog coming through, and just listening to nature all around you, just the thrushes that they have there got this really mournful tone.
Oh, wow.
It was just like it was like being in another world. It really was. And that really stood out. And that was probably one of my favorite photography trips, that just for those 3 days. That's the thing with photography, eh? You can be away for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks. And if you get that one day where everything's just magic, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens. It happened as well, actually, when we took a workshop group to Tuscany this year. We were there for 6 days, and we only got 1 day of epic conditions.
Yeah.
That made the whole trip.
Absolutely.
Because it was just that cloud inversions everywhere, and it's just amazing.
Fantastic.
But that's all you need as a landscape photographer. You don't need the whole trip to be 100% amazing. You just need these points and breaks in between the whole trip to make it really stand out. And that's why sometimes it's hard to pinpoint a trip that's your favorite, because it just takes those little sections of each trip to really make it up.
Yeah.
Because I consider myself lucky to be able to go to these places anyway. So when you get those little magic periods, that's what really stands.
What about horror stories? Have you had any trips that have just gone totally wrong?
No, I've had the old. I took one of my first one-to-one. I took a guy up to a local river of mine, and it was chucking it down with rain, absolutely throwing it down with rain. So I said, "We'll go under this bridge and just shelter from the rain a minute." I said, "But be careful, because there's slippy rocks everywhere. You get a lot of the river banks around here. You get a lot of moss. You get a lot of algae, stuff like that on the rocks, and it can make it really slippy. Same as you do at the coast. If you see black rocks, not to stand on them. Well, it's the same sort of situation." So I said, "Don't, just be really careful." So we sheltered under this bridge until it stopped raining. I said, "Come on, we'll move out." I said, "But just watch your step." I didn't even get the words out of my mouth. Just watch your step. Straight in the water, camera bag on the back, the whole lot. Underwater, he just disappeared, came back up. Oh my God. So I'm trying to haul this guy out of the river.
Wow.
And He's soaked to the skin. His camera bag had gone underwater. He trashed the lens. It was full of water.
Oh
I
no.
ended up having to bring him back home. I got him sorted so he can go and have a shower and all the rest of it. Luckily, I had a change of clothes with him, and he was fine about it because he realised it. But at the time, you think, oh, that was a great start to your
Am I going to get sued?
yeah, exactly. But what do you do? These things happen sometimes. There's nothing you can do all you
Start
can do
reading
is
your
warn.
indemnity policy to make sure that you're covered.
Exactly. But I did everything I could possibly do. And that's all you can do with these situations. I think you're always going to have these things that happen.
Yeah,
But you can't at the time I was thinking, did I do everything right there? Because you're thinking, oh, am I going to get
yeah,
sued? But yeah, you can, especially when you're working out in the natural environment, things are going to
absolutely.
happen.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's why it's so important to make sure people are aware. And the amount of, I don't know whether you get it as well, but sometimes people aren't necessarily truthful about their physical condition when they come on
yep,
a workshop.
yep,
And you can put it in the wording as much as you like, but
yeah,
they'll still turn up and they're exceedingly asthmatic or they can't
yeah,
walk up a hill or whatever. And you think, well, what am I going to do here?
yeah.
Because you've given them all the warning.
That's
But
it.
then, as we discussed before, or you're not just a landscape photographer, you're a tour guide, so you have to make sure that's 100% no matter what happens. But
That's it.
it can be frustrating. It can be
Yeah,
frustrating because you really, it's one of those things where people have to be as truthful as they can because it's important. Some of these places we take them to are dangerous.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the horror stories for me. It's the one that sticks in my mind, but touch wood, everything's been good since.
Fantastic. Yeah. Have you ever hit a creative wall? And if so, how did you handle it? And do you have any strategies for dealing with hitting that wall where things just aren't working for you?
Yeah, funny enough, before I took this 4 week break, I was starting to feel that. I
Yeah,
was
right.
starting to not being able to come up with ideas and thinking it's really difficult when you're working in a situation where you're putting the pressure on yourself to come up with something weekly,
Yeah, yeah,
especially whether it be video content, whatever it might be. Because there's only so many trips you can go on, only so many places you can go, only so many things you can talk about. It's like anything with photography, isn't it? There's
absolutely.
only so much we can talk about before
Yep.
you start repeating. And I think for me, when I hit these creative blocks, I can do one of two things. I either try something completely new and out of the box.
Hmm.
So if I've just been doing landscape, for example, I might go and I don't know, do some street photography or something like that, just to make myself think in a different way, whatever it might be. So when we went to Tuscany on that workshop, I found myself when we were in having little breaks in the towns and what have you, I'd just pull the camera out and do a little bit of street photography just to break it up for me. And if you start to try different genres of photography, it can open your mind up to other ways of working or other things, the way you do things. I think
Absolutely.
the other thing that I've done is just to completely switch off,
Yeah,
is to put everything away and just walk away from and not be afraid to do that.
yeah,
Because as we discussed earlier, creativity, no matter what it is, whether it's playing music, whether it's photography, whether it's art, no matter what it is, I think we can't be 100% creative 100% of the time.
yeah. You can't force it.
No, because the minute you do force it is when it starts to unravel.
Yeah,
And you just try, the harder it becomes because you're almost forcing it. And I think the more you force it, the worse it gets.
yep.
So for me, that's what I've done. I just thought I walked away from it all and I've started doing other things. So I'll put the camera away, I'll go and do some renovations, I'll go and do this, that, or the other, whatever it might be. And it gives your mind that space to come up with new ideas. Because
Mm.
when you're trying to come up with ideas at the time, you're clogging your mind up basically with how do you get out of this. It's almost like a negative thought that goes in your head.
Yeah, yeah,
I've got this wall and I can't escape from it. So the way to escape from it is just to switch off. It's
yeah,
just to away from it all. Give your mind that space to breathe. And I think that's what it's done for me. Obviously, I told you the reasons why I've had this break, but
yep.
over this last few days, I've started to gradually, ideas have started to come back again because
Yeah,
I've given myself that breathing space. I
yeah.
think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things that you can do is give yourself the space and time and not put pressure on yourself just to create because, as you say,
Yeah.
it just doesn't work that way. And
No.
getting into that creative flow state really means your mind must be in the right frame. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
just not going to work.
No, and the harder and the trouble is the more frustrated you get with it, and the more frustrated you become with it,
Yeah, yeah,
the harder it gets to get out of it.
absolutely.
I think it's really important to find, no matter what it is, whether it's walking away from it or finding something else that relaxes you.
Yeah, yeah,
I only have the two things really. I have photography, which I do all the time, and then I have the music, which I don't do enough of anymore.
yeah,
And then it's just doing things around the house. So
yeah.
photography used to be my hobby. Now it's my work. So I haven't got that
An
as a kind
outlet.
of backup. Yeah, an outlet. So you need something else as an outlet is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to get at.
yeah. What do you see as being the biggest challenge facing photography right now?
Well, as far as landscape photography, I guess one of the challenges is one of the huge ones is AI.
Hmm.
As far as me being more down of a natural photographer, AI to me is, I'm not saying it doesn't have its relevance in places because I can see it being useful. I just don't see it being landscape photography.
Yeah, I
That
don't
makes
see it being
sense.
photography at all. It's
No,
digital art and
exactly. So
another.
it's an art. I'm not saying it's not an art form. I'm just saying it's not. And when that's what I was getting at before when I was saying about adding things in and all the rest of it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's always been there. We've always had a certain amount of people who would, how do I put it, change the art, change the photography that was in front of to what was in their mind, which is fine. It's art, but it's not photography
yeah, yeah,
to be able to add anything in that you want. Oh, there's a castle there now, or there's whatever it might be. It's art, but it's not photography. And I think it's a real problem at the minute where people can put something up and you're not 100% aware whether it's real or not.
yeah.
I guess it stops people going to these places to look for them because they're never going to find them. But it's just, yeah, it's a really difficult because you're almost diluting that trust that people have in landscape photography.
Yeah, I think for me, there's gonna become a point where people maybe not value in monetary terms, but value in personal value terms,
Yeah.
photographs which are real more
Hmm.
than the AI generated stuff. The
Yeah, I
trouble
think so.
is the more AI becomes more realistic, the harder it's going to be to tell what's what.
Yeah.
And I guess that might be where it's time for, yes, you can show EXIF data and all the rest of that sort of thing. And you can say, here's my raw file and all those. There
Yeah.
are techniques that you can do it. You can't do that in social media every post because posting a raw
No.
file with, here's the raw, here's the edit. Well,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it becomes hard work, and you're
yeah,
almost trying. You're almost. The sad thing is, then though, is you're almost trying to have to prove yourself,
mm,
and
exactly.
it's almost being forced upon us to have to prove what we're doing,
And
and
it's not
it's
helped
not.
by the tools that are out there to help you find these things that are actually flagging real photos as 99% sure that's AI.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's, and I know a lot of people like AI, and I get that. I
Yeah,
really do. I get that. It's clever. I just think it's a really difficult place to be in for a landscape photographer
yeah.
to have to almost prove our worth all the time. You
Mm.
mean you used to always get it? Oh, that's photoshopped. Or,
I still get
but
that.
yeah, well, you do, and I think that's just added to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just another
absolutely.
thing. Oh, that's photoshopped. Oh, you've just done that with AI.
Yeah,
And you think, no, I've actually put a lot of effort into to create it. And
yeah. To
you've got to
going
put
there,
3.
capturing
Yeah.
that data and actually using it to
Mm.
give you an image. Yeah,
Exactly. And I think photography is already an understated and underrated art form. People don't see it as art, for one
no,
thing, a lot of the time. I don't know whether you experience the same when you're selling prints. People don't actually see it as art. It seems to be more disposable
yeah,
than, but to me, we as photographers, we're making an image. We're not taking,
yeah,
and that making of an image, I think is art
absolutely.
because not everybody can do that. Oh, I
No,
could get that with my mobile phone. Oh, could you? Really?
yeah, off you
Really?
go.
Yeah, off you go then. Yeah, you know what I mean, though. It's very. We put a lot of effort into to getting these images. We might go back to a location 20 times before we get the conditions or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas I want some fog there.
yep,
It's just, yeah, it's a really difficult position to be in, I think.
yeah,
And I just find it hard work that we have to justify what we're taking. more and more.
What's the best or worst piece of advice anyone's given you?
Best piece of advice. If it's dedicated to YouTube photography itself, I would say the biggest piece of advice that I got that really made me sit up and think about how I put myself across came from Gavin Hardcastle, of all people, who's actually said to me, he says, be 100% authentic.
Yeah.
And that's why I was getting to you before about being authentic, because he
Sure.
says, be 100% authentic. Don't try and be anybody that you're not.
Yep.
And the more you're authentic, the more you'll come across as such. And that's what stands you instead for all of it. Whether that comes across in your personality, whether that comes across in your imagery or your video work, no matter what it is, if you're 100% authentic, people will see that.
Yeah, totally.
So that's why I said I like that more natural feel in my images. But I like, as I said, I like the fantasy feel, but it has to be there. I don't want to add it, as we just discussed with the AI.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're 100% authentic, I think that's what you really have to be, and true to yourself. I think that's the biggest thing, is to don't change the way you think just to fit the narrative, just to fit what's going on currently.
Yeah.
Whether it be a certain way an image looks, if that's the current thing, don't go with that. Go with what you like. Be authentic and true to yourself, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. What about the worst piece of advice?
I don't really think I have one. Worst piece of advice: become a full-time professional landscape photographer. No, it's you do get asked that question.
Yeah.
Should I go full-time? And it's a difficult one to answer. Because you're the same as me. We're both in that sort of place now where you've seen how difficult it is to do.
Yeah, the challenges that, it's not like the fantasy of wandering around the world, clicking, pushing the button, taking the photos, editing, and that's all you do.
Yeah, because we're not influenced. We're not Instagrammers. We're not that kind of person. If that's what you want to do, that's a different thing. That's not a landscape photographer.
I certainly don't want to just create content.
No, exactly. It's not just content. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not content to a landscape photographer. You're putting a bit of your heart and soul into this. It's not just content, and content sounds a bit throwaway.
Disposable.
If that makes sense. Yeah, disposable. So yeah, it's a difficult question to answer for me, when somebody asks that question, should I go full time or not? I just basically say to them, they have to be prepared for the fact that you're going to have to not only be a landscape photographer, you're going to have to be a marketer, you're going to have to be a website designer, you're going to have about video editor, you're going to have about 20 different job titles, and be good at them all.
Yeah,
because it's not landscape photography, it's just this massive array of ever-changing stuff that you need to learn how to do. And if you're a person that likes to keep life interesting and likes to do different things, then I think that'll work for you. But if you think you're just going to be a landscape photographer, no.
You can be, as long as you don't go professional.
Exactly. And I think, but apart from that, an actual worst piece of advice, I haven't really had one. I've been really lucky. I've been really fortunate in the people I've surrounded myself with, that I've been really lucky in that they've guided me in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that goes people like Gavin, people like Adam, Matt, all of these people. I think that it's really important as a landscape photographer that wants to do it full time is to surround yourself with the right people.
Absolutely.
The people who have been in the business, the people who know the business, and generally are positive people.
Yeah.
Because you don't need anything negative to happen. You only want to be guided in the right direction by the right people.
Speaking of the right people, who should I be talking to on the podcast?
Have you had Adam on?
Adam Gibbs, yes, he's been on. Haven't had Gavin though. I have asked him, but I haven't had a response from him yet.
Yeah, you want to try Gavin, and then you could also try Matt Bishop. Would be a good one.
Yep.
If you could get him on. Gary Goff.
Yeah, I'd like to get Gary on. Yeah.
He's a good guy. He's a really good guy. I've been working with Gary a little lately, a few YouTube videos and what have you. A really interesting guy to talk to. So I would say Gary would be a good one to get on as well.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you.
No problem.
And I've got my last question, and for many, it's the most important one I ask. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I definitely do. Nothing wrong with that. Matt will hate me for that, living in Italy, but but I actually do. I haven't got a problem with it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful getting to know you, Paul, and learning more about you and how you operate. Where can people find your work? Obviously, YouTube is one of the first places to go.
Yeah, definitely YouTube. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, all the usual places, and also my website as well. If you just look up paulthompsonphotography.co.uk, you'll find it. And that's got all of my social media outlets on there.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Paul.
Cheers. Thanks very much for having me, mate.
Wonderful. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com, along with prints and photography gear. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. I hope to see you out shooting soon.